So, we're going to go on to episode 4 of Around the World in Depth. We have spoken about our first part of Italy, which we did together in the previous episode. We got to the point where we're around Lake Garda now. We've just had our first wild camp spot of the trip, my first ever bivvy experience, which was fascinating. I've been opened a new world, the world of Duncan Covey, which is dangerous. And we are heading down into Verona now and off into a new part of northern Italy, which we're very excited for, heading towards Dolomites. What do you remember of that first day into Verona? We had some pretty cool interactions as well that day.
Yeah, I remember the start of the riding was a really great start to the day off riding.
Yeah.
Lots of those tracks through the farmland that we'd finished the day on. The best thing about bivvying, wild camping in the middle of nowhere, one of the great things for me is when you start riding the next day, you don't have to get out of a town first. It's not like any other route where you have to go through all those roads first. You're onto the fantastic riding immediately from pedal stroke 1.
Joe's got a very funny memory. Do you remember the slight error you made immediately after leaving that campsite?
Are you thinking about the puddle?
Yeah.
So there had been some bad weather. We'd so far managed to miss most of it, but there was a puddle that didn't look too bad. So I just thought, well, I don't really want to get off and walk to get around it. So I'll just whack it. So I just pushed on through the puddle. I did slow down, but this puddle got deeper and deeper and deeper. Got up to my axles. Both my feet ended up. I was basically walking through the water on my bike. Yeah, it was.
Reminded us of that clip from
the Danny McCaskill.
The Danny McCaskill film. If you haven't seen them, go watch them. They are brilliant.
I like that comparison. That's good. But from there, it went back to normality for us.
Yeah.
And we headed into town. The routine generally is ride a bit and then stop at a cafe crucially for coffee.
Yeah.
Hopefully for some breakfast too. And we found a cafe to stop off in, just on the corner of a small sort of back street square, where we had breakfast and coffee, and we were just getting ready to leave when heard a whistle and some shouting, and from the other end of this long sort of back street, there was another bike packer waving at us. So we thought, well, he's coming over to have a chat, so let's wait for him. And his name was Morrow, and he was awesome.
It was epic. He was on this bike that, it just shows anyone can do what we're trying to do, essentially, I think, in a way, because he had this bike, I can't remember where the bike was from. He had one slightly broken pannier on the side. He had about 5 plastic bottles bungeed to the back of his pannier.
He was wearing sort of work, like the trousers that you'd see people.
It's kind of like workwear.
Workwear, yeah.
It was almost like a high-vis workwear type outfit.
Obviously no helmet.
Yeah.
And he was just living his absolute best life.
Brilliant.
He was buzzing. He was so happy to meet us. His phone rang and he almost missed the call because he was too busy dancing to the ringtone. Everything about him was just fantastic. And I'm very fortunate to have lots of amazing kit from some really supportive brands for this trip. But Joel, your setup's really nice as well.
Yeah.
We've both got loads of fantastic gear, and it's the one thing that I find a little difficult in the sense that I'm hoping that what I'm doing can inspire other people to go and ride bikes and just explore in general. But you don't need to have all of the amazing gear. It's awesome and I love it. But to see someone on a bike that, if I rode it to the shops, I probably wouldn't lock it up because no one's going to nick it.
He just made do.
He had absolutely no kit whatsoever, and he was on a mad adventure. And I thought that's a real inspiration.
It was a
fantastic way to start the day.
It was a great experience.
Yeah.
So this was all based in Verona. So Verona, we headed out into a lot of the Veneto gravel trail this day. So it was all farmland, farm tracks, which was absolutely brilliant. We had a great time. Ended up on the canals, if I remember rightly, that day.
Quite rough, quite bouncy, very flat, but really rough riding. So you definitely want to be on a gravel bike for it.
Yeah, massively.
But felt good.
And then that night, we had a nice little bit of climbing at the end of the day, and then talk to us about that final bit of the day.
Really flat day for the most part until we got to the end, and it was an absolute monster of a run.
Yeah.
Most of it was rideable until it got off road, and then we had to drag our bikes for a little bit. But as we got over the top of this, we were sort of going into a bowl of mountains, and as we went over the top, the rain started and some thunder was starting to boom. You start to feel a little bit of electricity in the air, so didn't hang around, but also thought, well, it's probably not the place where we want to bivvy up in the mountains.
Yeah.
It's going to be thunder and lightning. But there was a campsite, maybe 40 minutes down the road.
Yeah.
So jackets on.
It got cold.
Got
at this point,
really cold.
Really cold.
Got to a campsite.
Yeah.
They were really friendly. Let us in. Really cheap.
Yeah.
It was very basic. It was just sort of a couple of fields.
Maybe €20 for both of us on the tent,
Yeah.
and it was easy.
And we went to cook our food when the owners of the campsite said, "Oh, you can cook your food if you like, but you've ridden your bikes all day, and there's a really good pizzeria just down the road," which we couldn't. You can't say that to us because we just couldn't say no. So we dumped all our kit and sprinted.
We literally had a sprint into town. It was brilliant. There's some
It was
funny
only
videos
a
for that.
5-minute ride,
Yeah.
but we were
Yeah.
riding unloaded bikes again, and we knew we were going for pizza. So morale was high.
Yeah.
We got to this place. There was the staff there were really friendly.
Yeah,
Spoke
really
a little bit of
friendly.
English, and so we went in and got some food. What do you remember?
My
from this
memory,
evening?
I'm not sure I have much of a memory. That's the problem. We didn't realise we're in the Veneto region, or Veneto region. I'm not sure how you say it, and it's where they make Aperol Spritz or Aperol. So we looked at the menu, and it was €2 for an Aperol Spritz, and I was like, "What? Is it £10 in London easily?" Asked Duncan, "Do you want one?" And Duncan was like, well, "Yeah, we've never had one before." And I was like, "Huh?" So we must have ordered at least 4 Aperol Spritz each over the period of this night. They were strong.
They weren't small. I didn't know what to expect. I spent the last few years being quite boring, saving as much cash as possible,
For this.
so I could ride my bike lots and so I could ride around the world. So perhaps I missed out, but this was the start of my education from Joel,
It was.
who was in charge of ordering the Aperol Spritz, and
They kept coming. Please,
They
please,
were-
more.
they were very refreshing.
Yeah.
And we've been on the bikes all day. The food was excellent as
Yeah.
well. Massive pizzas. We left to ride back to our campsite. Fortunately, it wasn't too far because we were both incredibly full and
Way too much. We had
and
dessert as well, didn't
we
we?
had tiramisu.
We didn't need it. We had an extra portion of chips, which we didn't need, and then we had tiramisu, which we definitely didn't need.
And we also
But-
had some Aperol Spritz that we didn't
and
need.
apple spritz we didn't need. But brilliant evening. Headed back into the tent.
Great night's sleep.
Great night's sleep. Had a bit of a shaky start in the morning, which was slightly understandable, I think. But woke up in this beautiful bowl of a valley that we hadn't really seen the night before because it was dark.
And we sort of had hoods up, pinning it to get to the campsite in the rain.
Yeah.
But a wonderful start to the day.
Yeah, amazing start to the day. And then the next day, I think for me was the bit of the trip I was most excited for because I'd done the lakes before. They were gorgeous, but I'd been to both of them. This was the day where we headed up into the Dolomites, which for me was huge. I was absolutely buzzing. I know you were as well. We were excited.
That was partly why it was a good place for you to come out for, because when we had discussed my route before we sort of knew that you might come out and join, we were both incredibly excited at the concept of riding through the Dolomites.
Yeah.
So
Incredible mountain range. What do you remember about our day heading up into Bassano del Grappa?
that was we used quite a lot of, it was on the same gravel route and there were lots of disused rail lines, so there was more flat riding, gently trending uphill as we got towards the Dolomites. But as we got closer and closer, as often happens in these areas, you get wind pushes up against the mountains, the clouds push up against the mountains, they can't go over the top, and so they get denser and denser. It's hot and steamy and humid, sticky riding, until a storm arrives, and it wasn't long before sort of mid-afternoon, as is always the case there at this time of year anyway. The heavens opened, and we spent a while we could hear thunder and lightning, we could see lightning, trying to dodge these storms. Eventually they got us.
We did a good job for a while.
We did manage to stay ahead.
We had a Lidl stop. We'll talk about Lidl in a second. Important part of Italy. And we just looked to every single angle of the distance, and it was just black clouds. We were like, all right.
And it was closing in.
Rain jackets on.
Nothing we could do.
Let's do it. So before we headed up to Monte Grappa and started Dolomites, quickly talk about Lidl in Italy.
Lidl in Italy it was very difficult to ride past a Lidl sign.
You
because
couldn't.
The bakeries in the Lidls were just They were something else.
Yeah.
We developed a bit of a taste for a sort of apple turnover type thing.
Oh,
They were
cinnamony.
filled with stewed apple.
Oh my god, it was incredible, like mouth-watering. I'm currently salivating.
I could do with one. The best part was that we sort of told ourselves that there was fruit in them, so it was okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to know how many we had during the week that we were there.
I'd have at least 2 a day. One of the funniest parts was, I'm not sure if anyone's been to a Lidl in Europe or Italy in particular, you always have to play like a game
of course,
to like hook it out, and it's a challenge in itself just to get the strudel out of this bakery section. It's almost like one of the pick and what they're called in an arcade.
It's like an arcade machine. In most supermarkets that I've ever been to, anywhere ever, you open the door and you take it.
Yeah.
Usually with a pair of tongs. Here, they have the same glass doors on the front with a hole that looks like you should use it as an opening, but you have a long-handled sort of spoon scoop. It's a couple of foot long, and the first time I went in, I was trying to get them out, and I was trying to get this thing open. An Italian man came and tapped me on the shoulder and demonstrated. So yeah, it's a bit like sort of, I felt like I was playing golf, but eventually you managed to scoop these and drop them onto the tray.
It's part of the entertainment.
Lots of fruit puree as well.
Fruit puree. One of my big memories is out of nowhere, Duncan's putting his hand into the back of his bib short pocket. I was like, what are you doing all the time? And then out of nowhere, there's this huge pack of pretzels, these salty pretzels. He's just nibbling on all day, which made sense why he was never hungry at lunchtime. I was like, do you want some food? Nah, I'm alright. Pretzels everywhere.
It's carbs and it's salt.
It's all we need.
It's perfect. And they were exactly the same size as the rear pocket in my bib shorts. My shorts have got they're cargo shorts. They've got pockets on the legs, an extra pocket just above my bum, and there's pocket that wide, and the extra large bag of pretzels was that wide. Perfect.
You occasionally see them sticking out the back of his jersey and his bibs, and I just cycle past handful. Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant.
A good part.
Yeah, it's brilliant. So yeah, we've ridden through the storms. We've actually gone pretty hard at it because we were just like, let's just get through this. The storms have cleared amazingly once we've got to our final destination, which was Monte Grappa. We found this amazing campsite. Talk us a little bit about that evening.
Yeah.
It was an exciting feeling.
Yeah, it was about an hour and a half of really wet riding to get there, but just as we arrived and we found this campsite, we thought it was a good opportunity to charge stuff up, have a shower, dry out a bit because our kit was really wet. So we checked in, put the tent up, cleared up, it was lovely. We cooked some food. One of my favourite memories from Italy that was also from that little trip was we went in separately so we could both grab a few different bits, and Joel came out and said, once we were both at the shop, we both sort of unveiled that we both bought a surprise to go with dinner in the evening. No, we were gonna cook some pasta up, and we both bought exactly the same vacuum pack of olives. And the best thing is that I absolutely love olives. So do you.
So do I.
We hadn't had any for a while. We'd seen loads of olives, everywhere we went. We had absolutely loads. One pack would have been more than enough. Yeah. We had 2, and to top it all off, we made this food and tipped them in. And they were
disgusting.
So bad. They were
horrible.
Bad. They were awful.
So yeah, great surprise. When we both pulled out the olives, it was so funny.
And then when we realised how bad one pack was,
chuck.
Yeah, they weren't great. But the feeling at the bottom of Monte Grappa was really exciting.
Yeah, really exciting.
It's a massive mountain. There are multiple ways to climb it. This year it was in the Giro. It was quite a big stage when Pog decimated the field once again.
As per.
But it was, we were really excited to be able to ride on it. The downside was when we woke the following morning, it was raining gently, sort of mizzle in the air, thunder and lightning forecast. The climb was long, really long. If we went over the top, went really high, and it would have had us reaching the top at about the kind of time that typically thunder and lightning began, which, as much as we wanted to take on the climb, it was something that excited us both from a sports point of view rather than just travel.
Pure competition.
Yeah, it just wouldn't have been sensible. So we went up the valley instead, which in many ways is just as spectacular because you're not suffering quite as hard and you can see everything, mountains on both sides, following the river up and up and up, and it was
Stunning.
Just stunning. We had to reroute a few times
Yeah.
for landslides.
Yeah, there was a bit of like footpath that was closed. It was actually it was a cycle route, I believe, through these valleys. Bit was closed, so we went on the motorway, and half the motorway was closed off. And
Yeah.
there was cones down the middle, and these railway workers, we were like, "Can we go in there?" And they were like, "Yeah." Pulled us into this lane. We had a whole lane on the motorway just to ourselves, while these huge lorries were bombing it past.
But the best part was that it was in the middle. It wasn't the
Yeah.
outside lane.
Yeah, it was the fast
So
lane.
we were in the fast lane,
Yeah.
pootling up the hill on our bikes for miles and
It
miles
was
with
brilliant.
trucks thundering through. It was an awesome bit
It
of
was
riding.
so great. So yeah, we got through there, and then this actually was one of my favourite parts of the whole trip, I think, because we just got onto great gravel tracks and like farmland routes, and it was beautiful. And then we came across this almost dried out riverbed, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah, so a little river crossing, let's say. It was pretty small, but
It was lucky that we arrived when there wasn't much water in it,
Yeah.
because if the gravelly, rocky section that we had to traverse had been full of water, you would never see us
No,
again. It would have
impossible.
been impossible. But we carried our bikes across. It was just it felt like we were properly off the beaten track. And it was the case for the rest of the day. We rode up this valley on these beautiful tracks, and I remember that's quite a special evening because beautiful day, the views were absolutely stunning. It was a day we'd both been thinking of for quite a long time.
Yeah.
It was everything we could have
It
hoped
was
for
special.
and more.
it was
And as
special.
the sun started to go down, it was your last day,
Yeah,
and as the sun started to go down, the tops of the mountains, which were still snowy, went pink, and it was just really beautiful. It felt like we sort of rode along quite gently. We weren't pushing the riding, and we're just talking about what it takes to make adventure happen, because the riding's the impressive part, but it's the easy part.
100%.
Riding a bike around the world, the cycling is the easy part. If you can't ride a bike when you start, you'll be able to within a week, and then you get fitter as you go. But to make it happen is the really challenging part, and at that point it really hit me that years worth of daydreaming and lots of planning and the sacrifices that you do make. I remember a conversation we had where I'm really torn about the fact that I want to say it's so easy, you just have to do it, which is true because it's very simple, but it's not easy because you do have to make choices that get you in a position to be able to do it. And I remember having that conversation, and it really hit me at that point. Stunning views, and it was
It was incredible.
it was quite an important part of the trip for me, because I think it kind of settled me down and got me to realise quite what I was doing, and it was
We took it slower because you had steam trained the first bit, albeit maybe my fault, but
it has to be done.
yeah. So I think I've got a little question about this section of the trip.
Yeah.
So we finished in the middle of the Dolomites, and it was absolutely stunning. This place called Belluno, where I got the train home. I think my question is, this is at the end of this is a solo trip, albeit I'm here we've worked out I've been here for about a third of the trip, which is interesting.
For basically,
Yeah, essentially. What was it like riding with someone for the first time, considering it wasn't planned? We booked these flights pretty late on.
Yeah.
What was that like? You can be brutally honest. I
No,
won't take offence.
yeah.
No stress.
It was awful. No, it was great. I think the key thing for me is that it's a trip that I've been planning in the back of my mind for a really long time. Grown up inspired to ride my bike and explore by bike by my family, and to do something big like this I didn't want it to be, but it could potentially be a once in a lifetime experience. I'm hoping I can do many more in the future. But that said, if this is the one trip you get to do, if you share it with people, you can make it even better by sharing it with the right people, or can potentially ruin elements of it by sharing it with the wrong people. Which is why I've got loads of fantastic friends that ride bikes that I wouldn't necessarily want to come and do parts of this trip. And I vetted who was hopping on, and I was willing to take a punt on having Joel along, and this week was a really good example of the fact that it just worked effortlessly. It enhanced the trip. We have the same sense of humour.
Yeah. You don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
You're probably worse, is that the description?
I don't think I can say what I was going to say, but it was really it was great for me to be able to look back on this week and know it was a success, and it was quite a good confidence boost to know that I wasn't going to have to spend an entire year on my own to make the trip what I wanted it to be. I could share it with people, and that's really special too.
We had some really nice chats about it being like, I think for these kind of trips, you've got to make things easy because they're already challenging in a way enough. They're pretty simple, but there's challenges involved every single day. You have to make pretty last minute decisions all the time, which can be exhausting.
Everything's a last minute decision, and that's just part of it. And I think that's part of the challenge as well, is that especially now, I know we're in Turkey now, we'll get to Turkey in 55 episodes time, but I'm used to it by now, because for the last almost 3 months this has been my lifestyle, and it's fantastic. And for somebody coming out to join, it's like when on the occasions you have come out, you come out with fresh legs every time, and I'm generally cooked. So for the first couple of days, you rip me apart, and I'm trying to slow you down.
It's a conscious tactic, just to see if I can keep up for the rest of it.
And it is a tactic. You try and break me so that as you get tired towards the end of the week, or however long you're out for,
we're both broken.
We're both broken, and it's worked really well.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure to share it with you, and I'm glad that you've been out for more.
Yeah.
We'll see what we can do in the future
definitely.
too.
And we'll get to Turkey. Turkey has been insane. I know we're teasing this early. We'll get there. Okay, cool. So we're gonna finish episode 4 here.
Yeah.
We're gonna move on to the next part of the trip, which is when I left from Belluno. You had a day or two in Italy,
Two
before
days
getting to Austria, and this actually proved to be probably your most challenging section of the trip to date.
Yeah, for sure.
So we'll unpack that a little bit in the next episode. But yeah, a great time in Italy, and until the next one.
See you then. Ciao.